But yeah, Canelo versus Saunders, that again had that, and for us, obviously, having that UK interest as well, that was a big fight. All of the shenanigans and the build up to it, which I'm sure we're going to talk about now, made for an interesting spectacle in fight week.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it was like, even though you had all that going on with the ring and, you know, the gloves and all that were being spoken about at the time, you know, the first couple of days, it was like kind of a slow burner for content. But even just kind of the S&C coaches and the nutritionists who was getting on the channel, they were still doing like 15, 20,000 views on YouTube, which is more than what, if, you know, it was a normal fight back here in the UK, you'd get. Because he was just, without Billy Joe doing an awful lot to promote it, his team were doing a fantastic job still, because Billy Joe was just kind of trying to stay in the shadows until he got what he wanted with his ring and any other issues were sorted out.
Did you ever think that there was any chance of the fight not happening, the fight not going ahead, or any of that stuff that was kind of being spoken about in fight week?
I never thought about any of that. I was confident the fight was always going to happen.
Still titled every video, whoa, who knows, guys? It might not be.
got those clicks in.
Hey, we got it's a pandemic, guys. Anyway, getting out there, what was that like? Because obviously Billy Joe had his Greg Marriott, obviously had Tom Saunders. I think the week before we went, I had Mark Tibbs, obviously a big friend of the channel.
I think it was a day after I come back from Andrade Williams, and you said to me, "Oh, Andy, I know you've just come back, but can you do this interview because you couldn't?"
So I had, yeah. So Mark Tibbs messaged me, and he was obviously over in Las Vegas at the time, and he messaged me very late and said, "Rob, can you do an interview with Billy Joe Saunders' dad, Tom, who I've never spoken to before. I've never met him before." We've got some issues with the judges, with the ring, and blah blah blah. And at the time, I thought it was just issues with the judges and the ring. And he'd asked to do the interview, I think at 5 p.m. UK time. And I was actually buying my daughter's first bike at the time, and he tried to change the time. So I ended up changing it to you, and then he changed it with you again, and then eventually you ended up getting it done, which was the infamous Tom Saunders roast of Eddie Hearn, which was, I think, 20 minutes of him just really laying into Eddie and talking about Eddie not doing this and not honouring the contract and the judging and the this and the that. So that was a good start to a fight week out there.
Yeah, I mean, that was just kind of great to get that going, and it just kind of built into the week, really. I think, like I said, it was for some reason, it was just that slow burner. The only thing which kind of was frustrating for that week was just because he didn't get anything else extra with Billy. You know, he gave me a couple of minutes, but he didn't really do anything, and that was the only disappointing thing, because he said himself, you know, he was frustrated that British media weren't over there.
Yeah, I think that there was that was one of the parts of the interview with Tom Saunders where he was talking about, you know, we're not allowed our own media out here and they're stopping this. And obviously Coogan and Billy Joe are very good friends over the years, and I know Coogan really wanted to be out for that, but it wasn't Eddie Hearn who was stopping people going out there. It was Joe Biden. But yeah, fight week itself, what was Canelo like? Because we saw a little bit of spice from Canelo. I think we saw it on fight night as well. It kind of, as it built throughout the week. But was there a difference between the Canelo that you'd encountered for Canelo Smith and Canelo Yildirim and the Canelo that you saw for Canelo Saunders?
Yeah, like he for as weird as it sounds, he just had a lot more of a fired up look in his eyes. Like, he just looked like he wanted fight night to come sooner rather than later, because he was saying through the week in various interviews he was going to teach Billy Joe a lesson, and obviously we saw what happened with Billy Joe and the injury he sustained. And I don't think anybody wishes it on anyone or wanted to harm anyone in the ring, but I think Canelo wanted to put Billy Joe in his place because of the build-up, the trash talk, you know, the name-calling, all of it, and the messing about with the ring and what have you. I think and also obviously the altercations in the hotel lobby and what have you. I think it got to a point where Canelo was there like, you're going to see a different side to me on Saturday night.
Similarly to Canelo Smith, everybody seemed, obviously it wasn't out there, but everybody seemed pretty confident on Billy Joe Saunders' side.
100%. Like, had even more of a confident feeling from Billy Joe than what I had anybody else, because he's always been relaxed and confident no matter who he's fighting. He's always had that same aura, and I think him getting Tyson out there as well. I think Tyson arrived on the Wednesday, and it was when Tyson arrived, everything just blew up then. He was like, Jeez, I was carrying my camera everywhere with me because you just never knew what would kick off, and you didn't want to be the one to miss it. And then Tyson gets there, and Tyson brings his own aura, which I think Tyson getting there took it away from Canelo. So then not as many people are focusing on Canelo. They're also looking at Tyson thinking like, oh, Tyson's here, world heavyweight champion. So it kind of worked in Billy Joe's favour to have some of the shine taken away from Canelo in the build up to that fight.
Was there? I heard rumours about drawings on the wall and Canelo's posters being defaced and stuff like that.
I don't know who, but I think somebody from Billy Joe's team had drew over one of the Canelo posters from the fight. Well, the Canelo Saunders poster just drew over Canelo. Yeah.
It all sounds so silly, but all is fair in love and war, as they say. You mentioned kind of that different look in Canelo's eye, the kind of the fire in his eye on fight night, throughout the week. What was it like on fight night? Because that was a packed out. That was fully boxing his back. I mean, that must have been an unbelievable atmosphere to be involved in, but like at any time, but particularly at a time where you're used to watching boxing behind closed doors or boxing with a small audience and stuff like that. Just describe what that was like. How quickly did it fill up? Was it packed early? Because obviously we see in America sometimes from fights that we've traveled to where people are sort of making their way to the seats during the ring walk really for the main event. They're not really too interested in the undercard. What was it like on fight night there?
That's the best atmosphere I've experienced in the sport, because it was 73,000 that was announced, but it felt like double. Like, but again, the fans for Canelo go crazy, and the noise, like I could feel like my ears were like popping. I've just never known anything like it. And you see my fans do the Mexican waves and throwing balloons, not balloons, but the inflatables like being blown up and thrown about, and it was just like, honestly, it's the best atmosphere I've ever seen at a live boxing event. Topples everything by a country mile, because it felt like there was 150,000 fans in there. Just everybody was screaming and cheering, and then Billy Joe comes walking out to these boos ringing around, and it was just something that I'll never ever forget. Just again, just thinking to how difficult it's been to watch shows, whether you've been there or not, without fans or with limited capacities, to then go and see 73,000 fans there. Like, he just blew my mind at how amazing that atmosphere was.
What about the fight? How did you feel? How did you see the fight? How did you feel the fight was unfolding at the time of the stoppage?
So I had Canelo 5-3 up at the end of the 8th. I could have argued 4-4 because I had one close. I thought Billy Joe was boxing well, but I thought Canelo was just, in the last couple of rounds before it, I thought Canelo was starting to break him down a bit. The thing that surprised me most watching it was Canelo was landing to the body a lot earlier than what I thought he was. Just from the first round, he's having to start working to the body.
He was really sinking him in that first round, yeah.
Billy Joe just unfortunately got caught with that eye injury when he did, but I just looked at him and I was there thinking he's breaking him down here, and gradually I thought he was going to lose on points, Billy Joe, at that point when I was just seeing those last couple of rounds how it was working out. But like I say, it was very close before obviously he couldn't come back out for that 9th.
Did you notice the injury straight away?
I didn't know what was going on, so I just saw them. I'm just watching it, and I just saw Billy Joe boxing, and like nobody ringside was saying anything, so we're just watching it. Gets to the end of the round, he walks back, and then I just see the white arms being waved. I was thinking, what's going on here? And then obviously you're seeing people saying on social media he quit. Obviously we didn't know what was going on. We didn't know about the eye injury. So then he's kind of you're reading everything on Twitter without seeing the official stuff. So it's kind of a balancing act. Usually, fights finished, go get your post fights. Whoever you see ring, sort of grab them. Can I grab 2 minutes with you? But we didn't really know what the injury was, which made it a bit more difficult to say, do you think Billy Joe quit or not?
Yeah, there was a lot of, whenever somebody retires on the stool or takes a knee or whatever you want to call it, there's always the Q word gets thrown about afterwards. Just going back to the injury, I remember like you can miss things like that randomly, depending on where you're sat in the ring. You can miss stuff like that. I remember watching Groves Eubank, and I didn't see George's shoulder come out, and I was thinking for the last round, like last half of the round, I was thinking, what's George going? Throw the right hand. And then when I watched it back, I was like, oh, that's why he wasn't throwing the right hand. So you can miss stuff like that.